So what we're going to do is I went ahead and already drilled the hole so I didn't have to bring a drill. We're going to put this on that worm screw and hold it. You really don't need a whole lot of bite on it. So, you know, if you got a thin piece that you want to make a platter, that's plenty of bite to get on there, and it's a ½ inch. I've already gone ahead and we're gonna hold it with the outside of these jaws. So I've set my divider, my calipers to that. Now, one thing we'll talk about more when we get into doing the dyeing on this piece is how do you make the transition from the dye to the wood. On this one, I just cut a little groove and I used a magic marker for the transition. On this one, you know, I put black on first, and then I only did the color on this area, and then just picked up the cut right there, and it made a nice transition as well. But this is another good example of the OG. This one here is an example of me having a beautiful piece of wood. This was done probably 5-6 years ago, so I was 4 years into turning. It's too thick. Yeah, other than that, it's got nice shape. So what you do with a piece like this, since it still looks nice, is you put it on a stand up on the mantle of your fireplace where nobody can get their hands on it and feel how heavy it is. So when you're putting this onto the screw, just run your lathe real slow and hold this very light, and it'll feed right on. We'll lock that. Oh. All right, that's on there nice and tight. First thing we're going to do is just true up the outside. You don't have to have this tailstock. I try to work always as safe as possible. There's no place for this thing to go with that screw in there and this tailstock up against there. I can stand right in front. I don't stand in front of the workpiece very often. Even when I true this, I'll probably stand off to the side. Not worried about any tear out on this side because that's going to be the bottom. We're going to shape the bottom first, and then we'll flip it around onto the chuck. So really, I've only got to true it up in this one area right here. I don't need to do any more than that because we're going to remove all this material and make this OG shape. Okay, first thing we're going to do here now is, I'll remove that for just a second. We'll go ahead and figure out how we're putting it on the chuck. Now when you're doing this, I'm going to scrape with just this side. You don't want to let this side touch the wood because it's going to sling that back at you. I've had that happen as well. And if you put a little bit of a negative rake on that, it's less apt to dig on you as well. We'll put one cut on this just so we can see it better. We'll come back and finish the rest of that after we get the shape put on it. So for the OG, we're looking for a convergence of the concave to the convex shape. So we want that to be about halfway from where the base is. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're just going to get rid of some material now. Moving my hand back because those chips are hot. I'm going to true this up a little bit right here. Pretty piece of wood. I'm just going to move this out of the way so I can get my handle around here. We'll get a sharp gouge. We're getting down close to the finish of the bottom. Well, that's a pretty good OG shape. Now we'll create the area for our tenant to hold it in the chuck. We'll flip it around and finish the other side and get into some coloring. When you're doing that shear scraping, a lot of times it helps to get the tool rest more away from the workpiece. When I make this, I'm going to try to make it angled back this way so that it catches better on the outside of that chuck. You don't need a lot. Even 1/8 of an inch is enough. I'm not going to do any sanding today just to try and keep the dust down for Billy. But obviously if I had a dust collector, what I would do is I would sand this back complete so I wouldn't even have to come back to it. I'd go all the way to 320 grit. But I'll take it home and I'll sand it and I'll bring it back next month finished. Alright, so we'll close this chuck down since we're holding it on the outside of the jaws. Again, safety. It's not going anywhere. There's no way, even if this comes loose, it can't come off the lathe. Alright, so what I think we'll do here on this lip is we'll make it a little bit convex and then back down. Now the next thing we have to ask ourselves is what size should the rim be for the size of the platter? That to me looks like it's a little, maybe slightly too big. I don't know, what's it look like to you guys? Looks good? Okay. And we want to leave this rough wood on here while we put the die on so that it doesn't matter if the die bleeds over into the other side, and we're going to cut that away later. So now we'll just move this out of the way for a minute and we'll do the die. Put a little sand on that first. That's the only sanding we'll do. Slow for sanding. Yep. Burned it? Yeah, I've done that Jimmy Clues, this dye that we're going to use is alcohol based. Once he puts that on there, he likes a little flare, so he's a smoker. He takes his lighter out and burns off the alcohol, and then you're ready to go on to sanding and the next color. But no, I've never tried just burning it. No, I've never. I'm looking forward to you coming and demoing that. All right, I'm not going to make the mistake I did yesterday when I was getting ready for this and making sure my little containers were full. Now, with this dye, you like to start with the darker colors first. And we're not going to do all these colors, but I have a red tone, black, orange, it's a yellow. They're called TransTint. I'm not going to pass them around because you'll have the stuff all over you. That's blue. Looks like I didn't fill that one, so there's green. TransTint. This is these are the ones that Cindy Drozda uses. Jimmy Clues uses some that come from England. You know, it's where he's from. But that's what the bottle looks like, and the ratio is 1 ounce of this for a quart of either water or alcohol. So you use, I mean, this is a lifetime supply of this if you did this every month, which I don't. TransTint, I might have had to get that from like Woodcraft, I think. You can just Google TransTint and it'll. Okay, so I think what we'll do is we'll start with black. So you just rip off a little piece of paper towel. I wouldn't normally leave this rim this thick, but it's running out so badly that I got to try and fix that at home. That won't take long to dry. Like I said, if Jimmy Clues was doing it, he'd turn the lathe on and hit that with his lighter, and that alcohol would burn right off. We'll sand that back. That figure's starting to show up already a little bit with just that black. Looks like some kind of a maroon or something. I did the demo doing this coloring years ago back when we were over at the school, but I didn't do any turning. See, I was chicken too. It's not dry. I think we'll try something experimental here. We'll do a couple different colors next. Green and maybe a yellow. Okay, we'll see if we can wipe the alcohol off with the paper towel. I wouldn't put the black, would use a magic marker to to blacken the rim. I'll wait and do that later because I got to true this thing back up. But the reason I wouldn't use the dye is because it would bleed over into this backside. $2.20. I brought $3.20. It looks smooth enough with this $2.20, believe it or not. Now, it's not going to look like it will ultimately until you go to put the finish on it, and then it's going to pop. I think I'll probably finish it with the crystalline. Get sort of an idea what it's going to look like. That's more alcohol. Now we got to let that dry. And we can sand it back a little bit more if you know, if it makes it look a little bit better. It'll be easier once this alcohol all evaporates out. All right, we'll finish the inside. Again, I might not take it down to the finished size, but you'll get the idea. We just put that there to make sure everybody's safe. Getting some more sanding on our rim there. There's a limit to how much I'm going to be able to use this tailstock. I'm going to leave this thing thick so that I can fix the out around issue on my lathe. So at this point, since we took that tailstock off, it's probably a good idea just to double check that we're good and tight. Yeah, you got to keep the surface footage up. When you get down to the smaller diameters, that's when you need to raise the surface footage on the tool into the material. When you get down to the smaller diameter toward the middle, it's more important that you have the tool rest at the right height as well. If I didn't have a vacuum chuck that I can re-chuck this thing at home, I would probably leave that screw there and try and redo it that way. But I think I'll be able to true it up better with the vacuum chuck. And just to show you what I would do if I was going to finish this, I'd probably take this negative rake scraper, which is, it's got a negative rake, but it's sharpened here to throw a burr up on this side, when the burr is actually what's doing the cutting. And that'll even out this pretty good, and hopefully this wood tends to, the grain likes to tear out, although that looks like a pretty decent finish, but we'll see what the scraper does. It may tear the grain. Got a little line there. Take that out. Definitely not as good a finish with the scraper. It's torn the grain right there. So we'll go back one more time with the gouge and see. It's always good to have lots of sharp tools with you. I keep 4 of these gouge. I sharpen 4 at a time. You can see that torn grain from the scraper. Scraping on the inside of any bowl, now we can get away with it on this one because it's flat and because of the way the wing is on my tool. I can do the shear cut here. Okay. Any questions?